Okay, Boxing Fanatics, welcome to the first episode of the Boxing Fanatics podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by online editor at Boxing News Magazine, Mr. Steve Wellings. Steve, I think it's best we start off with um, the midweek battle between Australia and New Zealand. Jai Opetaia brutally knocking out late replacement David Nyika in the fourth round. Yeah, what did you make of the fight?
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me, Dan. I thought the fight was okay actually. Naika was a better opponent than Sin Cara, the original guy who pulled out injured. He came to fight. At the time, a lot of people were saying he gave Opetaia a good go, which I wouldn't disagree with, but I thought it was relatively one-sided as well. I thought Opetaia had his way, landed his shots. He was generally in control. Naika's a big unit, and the ending was absolutely brutal. He was lying against the ropes, prone, as we've seen many times, and he just got knocked out cold. And he can come again. He is nearly 30, that said, but Opetaia got the job done. That's the main thing. Keep everything on track, Dan. That's what he needed to do.
Yeah, 100%. I think I somewhat agree. I think at the end of the day, he's a fourth round knockout. I think what I'll say to Niika's credit is that he did actually come. It looked like he came and tried to win at the very
Mm.
least. So many times when the B-side fighter comes along, they're kind of, boxing in the back foot, just trying to spoil, trying to survive. I like how Niika kind of, actually backed Opetaia up against the ropes a few times. Tried to land something significant. I think he did catch Opetaia. I think I don't know, it was at the end of the second round or something. And I wouldn't say Opetaia's legs buckled, but it looked like he felt the shot. It's fair to say. But yeah, Nyika, you're right. Is definitely looked like a big cruiser. I actually thought he was the bigger man in there, to be fair. But Opetaia is so athletic and so. I think his hand speed is actually a little bit underrated. I mean, he's got very fast hands. And yeah, he's very aggressive, very ferocious. Did you expect Nika to last a bit longer, or did it kind of go as you thought it would?
No, I did think Naika would last a bit longer. I thought that he would box a little bit more conservatively. He wouldn't come out the blocks firing as quickly as he did. And I felt that Opetaia's experience down the stretch, maybe Naika would fade and Opetaia would perhaps get to him rounds 9, 10 into the championship rounds. But you are absolutely right what you say. Credit to Naika. He did come out, he had a go. He said, I'm the bigger man. Like he said, he looked very much like a heavyweight in there. I'm going to put it to you. And I think it was the end of the second, possibly the third. I can't quite remember either. When he did catch Opetaia with something, and Opetaia grinned and came back firing. And yeah, it was a good fight. And absolutely, I don't want to take it away from Naika whatsoever. He had his game plan. He believed strongly. We saw that on social media that he could win. But
Mhm.
Opetaia he's at next level. Very aggressive, as you said. Puts his shots together lovely. And he was just too ferocious for him. But no, absolutely credit to Naika.
And let's talk a bit about the knockout. I mean, I can't remember exactly what shot landed, but the first knockdown, I mean, Nyika kind of he went down, maybe a lack of experience, kind of jumped back up straight away. In fairness to the referee, he gave him a chance. I mean, Nyika, I think it was the right call personally to give Nyika a chance. He had some sort of wits about. I mean, the writing was on the wall, but he could stand, he could kind of move to the side. He didn't look like he was completely gone. So credit to referee to give him another chance. But then saying that, it wasn't long, maybe 30 seconds after where, well, Opetaia, I mean, probably one of the most brutal knockouts I've seen in a while to be. Maybe I mean the other one that stands out to me is the Dubois knockout of Joshua, where Joshua was knocked out brutally there, but. Yeah, Naika knocked out colds, kind of heart in your mouth kind of stuff. Yeah, on the floor. I remember watching it and thinking, wow, he's still on the floor here. Kind of a reminder of the brutality of what we're watching. But thankfully, Naika got to his feet, and we haven't heard anything that he's, had to go to hospital for anything major or anything like that. Yeah, but what did you think of the knockout anyway?
I think what you said at the end is correct. He was on his I'm not on Instagram, but apparently he was on Instagram there yesterday saying he was okay. He's gonna come back, and so he is okay. Referee David Fields, very experienced referee, knew what he was doing. Absolutely, I'm always sort of regular. People who listen to me regular or read my writing will know that I am sort of on maybe to my detriment at times. Let things go. Let's find a conclusive ending here. And I think David Fields was absolutely right to let Nyika carry on, although he was clearly buzzed. He did jump up, as you mentioned, a little bit quickly to try and show, look, I'm here. I'm a hard man. I can fight. I'm okay. But maybe he got up a little bit too quickly. But it was one of those pro knockouts, as I mentioned before. And I remember seeing one of those in person myself. Gosh, it must have been about 7 or 8 years ago now. Mikey Garcia against Dejan Zlatikanin. I was ringside for that. And it's one of those ones where Zlatikanin got hurt and he sort of hovered in midair for a second where his senses had gone. Defend yourself at all times. Mikey Garcia absolutely iced him. Similar to this, maybe not the same thing, but Nyika for a split second was up against those ropes. He'd been hurt, and Opetaia's job was to finish him off. And you kind of looking back at the replay, at the highlights, see it coming. Oh dear, this isn't going to end well, and he absolutely iced him. But it was a pro knockout, and you do see those from time to time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, as bad as it sounds, it attracts eyeballs. As I feel horrible saying that, but knockouts like that, I mean, people want to see that kind of stuff. I mean, this is boxing. It's
Yeah,
a reason why Mike Tyson was such a, was so popular because, yeah, as bad as it sounds, people want to see knockouts like this. I think everyone wants people to get out of the ring safe, but they do want to see people get knocked out. And you know, Opetaia, well, he is exciting. No one can deny that. Steve, in your opinion, is Opetaia? I think is Opetaia unbeatable at cruiserweight? I mean, does he have to move up to heavyweight to have like a real challenge at this point?
just parking that quickly, I will say your previous point was a good one. People do love knockouts. That's why they watch Mike Tyson. That's why they're at the water cooler on Monday morning because Tyson knocked people out. Same with Javonta Davis, highlight reel knockouts.
Mm.
As good as the sweet, we love the sweet science and we watch the fights every week. People aren't going to talk to their workmates on Monday morning about like Rigondo going 12 rounds. They want to see people brutally knocked out. So Opetaia has ticked that box. And onto your other point as well, I don't think he's unbeaten at cruiserweight. I think he will beat Gilberto Ramirez if
Mhm.
and when that fight happens, but I don't think it'll be a walk in the park whatsoever. Ramirez is a big old unit and hard to get rid of. He throws his quite fast shots as well. Now, once he's got past Ramirez, you would imagine the challenges are kind of few and far between. The WBC situation, as usual, is up in the air. Don King's wrapped up in it. You've got Mikhailian, I think, is maybe champion in recess or something now. Ryan Rizicki run a version against Peralta. Badu Jack was elevated. All these guys Opetaia beats all them. So the main challenge is unifying with Ramirez. So he probably is unbeatable at cruiserweight. He showed in the two fights with Maris Bradis that he's a tough guy. He's a hard man fighting through that. Bradis is no walk in the park. We saw his fight with the Usyk. So Opetaia's next challenge, you're quite correct, could be moving up to heavyweight and fighting those guys. And I'm not sure how he'll fare at heavyweight. He's big enough, but my old friend Andy Patterson made a good point about Opetaia when he
Mhm.
broke the jaw, and I think he had another injury early on his career or something like that. He wonders how, in the land of the giants, he can cope with the much, much bigger men, which they are. I mean, he's a big guy, Opetaia, so is Nyika, but you move up to heavyweight, as you know, and that they're big guys. They punch hard. Can
Mm.
Opetaia's frame and his body compete with those big guys? So I know that's why the Usyk fight's so interesting because he's a naturally smaller guy who was also moved up from cruiserweight. So how he fares at heavyweight will be interesting, depending on the size of the person. And if he gets past Ramirez, I think it's odds on that he's going to unify the cruiserweight division. So the challenges must come at heavyweight.
Yeah, 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 100%. I would like to see the Gilbert Ramirez fight. Hopefully that fight happens. Hopefully Turkey puts that together. I think
Mm.
Ramirez showed against Billiam Smith that he's quite a quality operator. He really can box. So hopefully that happens this year. Like you said, I don't see any other personally. I don't see any other major challenges at cruiserweight. As for him moving up to heavyweight, yeah, I mean I'm not sure because I think with Opataya, he does shit punishment from time to time, which I think is a concern. Like you said, he did break his jaw against Bradis, and I remember we were talking about Tim Tszyu once, and he
Yes.
bit of the tough man, and I kind of see that a little bit in Opataya as well. He's a bit of a tough guy. Um, yeah, he's a very tough man, and sometimes I just feel like maybe he's putting himself in harm's way a bit too much. I think maybe at cruiserweight he can get away with it. Maybe they don't quite have the power to really kind of put him away, but like you said, at heavyweight, it's a different ball game. I mean, there's some, the power these guys have. If he's leaving his chin up the air, chin in the air like that, it's possible he can get knocked out. It's a different ball game. Obviously, Usyk has shown the blueprint of how you need to be a heavyweight. Lots of lateral movement.
Mm.
Changing the angles all the time. That's using your quickness, using your speed. But yeah, I think it's inevitable. But let's see if Ramirez can give him a challenge. Also on the
I think
undercard,
just quickly, Dan, I was going to say just quickly what you're saying is right there. Just to, if I can interject, the Aussie hard man, it's a stereotype, but it's absolutely a thing. We go back to like your Danny Greens, Jeff Harding, these kind of Paul Briggs. Absolutely, these guys just loved wars. It is, a cultural thing within Australian boxing. So you're right, they will stand and trade.
yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a coincidence at this point, is it? In that part of the world, they love a scrap, I guess. They just love
Yeah,
love a scrap. I mean, it's entertaining to be fair. It's entertaining. I
it
can't
is. It is. Yeah, yeah.
I can't knock it. Um, let's move on to Justin Huni on the undercard, who had a second round stoppage of Sean Potgieter. I got to be honest with you, Steve. When I saw Justin Huni fight against Kevin Lorena, I wasn't really impressed. I thought it was kind of too passive on the back foot, a bit too much. When you see what kind of Dubois, I know Dubois was knocked down 3 times by Lorena, but thereafter he dispatched him pretty quickly. But saying that, I guess I know Sean Potgieter is not, he's no world beater, but I like what I saw from Justin Huni. A lot of hand speed there. Seemed to have some good boxing ability, good body punching. Yeah, what did you make of Justin Huni's stoppage of Potgieter?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. Same as you, Potgoiter. He came in with a bit of a pot belly, really. I mean, he was like a blown up light heavyweight, and Hooney's a big unit. Similar sort of concerns, I suppose. Not really concerns, but the way he fights against Lorena, he was a little bit square at times. Lorena had a few opportunities to catch him, similar to the way he did with Dubois. And he is an experienced operator, Lorena. He's sort of hung around world level at cruiserweight, so he's no mug. But yeah, Justice Huni's size, his jab, it is going to be a problem for people. But I think at times he is a little bit stiff and. Not to jump too far ahead of the gun, they are talking about a possible Moses Atoma fight, and you would think that someone explosive hand speed who can close the gap very quickly with their footwork and get to the target very quickly with their hand speed will cause Huni, I think, problems. If he can keep you at the end of the jab, he will have success. But there are going to be tougher opponents to come than old pot guy. So this was just to keep things ticking. I think get him on the undercard, get him exposed, let people see him knocking people out, and then move on to the big one. But yeah, I think he will struggle against fast-handed opponents.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to disagree there. I mean, yeah, Potgieter definitely not. Yeah, definitely, I guess a step down compared to Lorena. To be fair, Lorena's a much better opponent than um yeah, he's a much better opponent. But yeah, Moses Atalma, there is talk about that. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised Eddie's talking about that. I mean, yeah, that's a tough it's a very tough fight. I guess both are kind of prospects in their own right. Obviously Moses Atalma has looked a lot more impressive than Justice Huni, and I don't think anyone's gonna deny that. But yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, yeah, if that fight was to happen, Steve, what would be your prediction for a Justice Huni versus a Moses Atalma fight?
I think you have to favour Atoma strongly from what you see of the both of them. And the fact that Eddie's putting Hooney, who I believe is his man, forward shows that they're all obviously in bed now with each other regarding sort of him, Frank, Riyadh season. Um, you wouldn't have thought they would have made that fight if it hadn't been for the likes of Saudi bringing them together. And maybe Eddie's happy for that to happen now and sort of cash out sounds a bit strong, but sort of cash out Hooney to a certain degree because they're all under the same umbrella now. And as for Atoma, not to get sidetracked too much, which I often tend to do.
Mhm.
It'll be an interesting test for him. It's another big unit. So obviously, Dempsey McKean was supposed to give him that test. Didn't even last a round. Got absolutely iced. Can Hooney do better than that? I think yes, he can. And it's another box to tick. Every prospect, as I always say, needs to tick boxes. Atoma looks $1 million at the moment, but we've seen guys in the past, surefire, nailed on heavyweight prospects, look $1 million and they've come a cropper. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Atoma, but we need to tick certain boxes. How do you take a punch? Can you do 10 rounds? Can you do 12 rounds? What happens when you get cut? There's all these different variables in boxing and we have to see them ticked off one by one. And Atoma at the moment still has questions to answer, not in an accusatory sense, but we just don't know at the moment. Huni could take him into deep water. He could find we could find out a lot about Atoma, as we do with any prospect who is aspiring towards world level. So we'll wait and see. And yeah, it's a good fight to be made at this stage of both of their respective careers.
Yeah, I mean, just touching on well, first I'm gonna talk about Hooney. I mean, you made a good point. I mean, heavyweight wise, I'm trying to think who Eddie Hearn kind of has. I mean, I suppose obviously Joshua he's still around. He's not doesn't seem to want to retire. Hooney, um,
Mm.
I'm guessing because that was his show, Terramona Jr., who we will talk about after. I'm guessing he's signed to Eddie Hearn.
Yeah,
Um, so you're right though, because it's all under umbrella. It's true. I guess it's almost like I don't know, less protection, but I guess they're more willing to take risks, like you said. In terms of Moses Tama, what I will say, and you're absolutely right, we've seen it so many times. Someone looks so unbeatable, but you know, we have to remember who he's fighting. And what I will say, Moses Tama, because of his style, he's very explosive. And what I've realized from watching boxing is that fighters who are very explosive in the early rounds more often than not, their power, decreases as the fight goes on. So that will
mm.
be interesting for me. If Moses Talma goes into someone who can even maybe just spoil a little bit, know how to survive, clinch, do all the dirty tactics, and then let's see, rounds 8, round 7. Let's see, is the power still there? Is the explosiveness still there? Because that will be interesting. So I mean, if Huni does fight Atama, I think anyone who fights Atama, that should be their tactic, really. Bring him into the later rounds because I mean, it's likely his explosiveness is gonna decrease. We sort of, when Anthony Joshua first came in the scene, he was knocking everyone out, and then as we saw when it started going to later rounds, he wasn't as explosive. Um, but
Yeah.
let's see. These are two. I'll say these are two prospects. Moses Atama definitely uh, ahead. Definitely looked the more impressive. But anyway, let's move on to another prospect on the undercards,
Mm.
Teramo Jr., who destroys Osasu Otobo in 1 round. Yeah, what's been your thoughts of Teramo Jr. so far, Steve?
Yeah, not really many thoughts at the moment. I mean, as I say, it's hard to gauge given the level of opposition that he's in with, which is completely understandable because he's a young guy, he has amateur experience, he has a good background, he's got the size dimensions, he can clearly punch. But you kind of know these guys, even though Atabu, the opponent, was coming in at like 11-1, we sort of knew what his level was. And when Terra Moana dropped that left hook, I think it was, top of my head in the first minute and a half, he
Mhm.
sort of shrugged when the guy wasn't getting up as if to say, oh, this is the kind of opponent I'm in with. What can you do? So once
Mm.
he moves up the levels and they get him in against those journeymen or the guys who can mess you about for a few rounds, and you have to think a bit more. You have to go up and down the levels. You have to vary your shots and yeah, just generally use your brain. Then we'll see the best of him. At the moment, he's doing what's asked of him, and you can't ask for any more. But he's got a lot going for him. I'll say that size, the punching power. He's a specimen. Seems like he can speak well. He can string a sentence together, which is always helpful for the future if you need to sell a fight. So I like what I see so far. Early days.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. And like you said, I mean that's what prospects are meant to do, like heavyweight prospect. That's what we want them to do. We want them to go in and yeah, and destroys in front of them because, like you said, the opposition it's not gonna be great at the start. What I will say about Terramana Jr. is that he is a former Olympian, and I believe he actually fought Jalalov at the Olympics.
Yes.
And I think unlike my brain escapes me. Who's the other American prospect, Steve? It's
Torres, is it you're thinking of? Ujala
Richard
Loveice?
Torres. Yeah, Richard
Yeah,
Torres.
yeah, yeah.
But unlike Richard Torres, Taramania Jr., wasn't significantly hurt by Jalilov. So, I mean, potentially a good chin there, I suppose, as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jalilov is very known for his mega left hand. Um, but yeah, I guess time will see. Like you said, there's not much to go off at the moment. Yeah, like you said, he's ticking the boxes so far. He's got the
Mm.
size, like you said. He's got the power. He's got the aggression. Seems to have some sort of charisma there. So, but I guess on that one night, Steve, would you say that we saw potentially three players of the new kind of heavyweight generation? Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, that's an interesting frame, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way, particularly. Yeah, they're obviously all quite far in different spaces along their kind of boxing journey. But potentially, I think actually, funnily as funny as it sounds, even though we know the less about him, I wonder whether Tera Moana might have the sort of highest ceiling at heavyweight, which might sound a bit disrespectful to the Opetaia, who's a seasoned world champion, potentially is going to unify the cruiserweight titles. As for Huni, I'm not really 100% convinced of him. So potentially, yeah, Tera Moana could have the highest ceiling of the three of them, but they could all play a part to some certain degree. And especially down under, if you could get fights down in Australia, yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Actually, time will tell.
Yeah, I guess Taramana, he does have the size. Actually, how Justice Huni? How tall is Justice Huni? Is he? I'm not sure if
I'm
he's.
not sure. He's
I'm
big.
not
He's a big
sure.
lad, though, isn't he?
I think he's quite a big lad. But yeah, I think I'd agree. Taramon Jr. might have the highest. I mean, it really depends how Opetaia looks at heavyweight. I think
Yeah.
if Opetaia, like we said before, comes in with this kind of hard man mentality and just thinks I'm gonna out tough everyone, then I don't see it, going that well at heavyweight. If he, like we said, uses the Usyk blueprint where he kind of uses movement, etc., then who knows? He could reign. He could do really well, and he could be part of that upper echelon of the heavyweight division.
He
Uh,
could be to Usyk what Michael Moorer was to Holyfield, maybe. Could be history repeating itself, perhaps.
mm, yeah, that's true. That's true. Who apart from who in the kind of the new generation, Steve? Are you the new heavyweight generation? Who are you kind of hedging your bets on in the next generation to kind of dominate? As Fury, Joshua, Usyk eventually kind of retire. Who you got your eyes on?
Yeah, I'm not really sure I'm hedging my bets on too many of them to dominate. It could be one of those eras that we have in between eras where rather than having a dominant heavyweight champion, we might have different guys picking up different belts at
Mm,
various times. I suppose that happened a little bit in and around the Klitschko era, basically because there was belts being created left, right, and centre, mostly by the WBA. But sometimes you have those little eras where, for a time being, Usyk might sit on top, and you might get some good scraps below him. And if we have to have an interim title here and there to make those scraps, then so be it. But the likes of Itayama obviously looks very good. Jalalov's in a strange position because he's obviously very good, very seasoned, very experienced, punches really hard, but he has sort of these promotional issues, whatever. I don't really know what's going on with him. And then he went back to the Olympics and all, and it's all very bizarre. Who else have we got coming out forward? There's the big guy. I like the look of that big lad who Joe Goosen was training, that Hovhannissian, but I think it's
mm,
Hovhannissian you call him, but he seems to have disappeared. He was on the demise of the PBC has obviously let a lot of people into no man's land. Pero, the Cuban as well, thought he looked quite decent. He's sort of stuck with the PBC now. And then you've got the old guard clinging on. Wilder talking about still fighting.
mm,
Zhang's old. Parker's being recycled through his own endeavours, I suppose. But as
mm.
for the ones coming through, there are some interesting prospects, but no one really stands out too much. I'd love to see Bakoli. I know he's not a spring chicken. Get some kind of an opportunity. I mean, he just every time he has a big win, he seems to do himself more harm than good, and he absolutely battered Anderson. It was a brilliant performance, and Anderson's out quicker than he is, so yeah, it's hard to know. I don't know. Maybe it could be Huey Fury's time to shine, as we've been told for the last 10 years. But unless I'm majorly missing out on guys, it could be a case of pushing them together, maybe down to make the good fights rather than one of them being dominant.
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree. I think it's potentially another, I guess, potentially another golden generation in terms of it can be very competitive because at the moment maybe it's not necessarily clear. I think Jalov looks like a great talent, but like you said, he's kind of. I really don't agree with this kind of pros going back into the amateurs and fluctuating between the two. I mean,
Yeah, me
I don't
neither.
know. I don't know why that's been brought about. And Jalov, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I've heard that I don't know. He gets paid a lot by his country to fight in the Olympics, and it is strange stuff. I'd like him just to kind of go full throttle into the heavyweight division. Bacoli, yeah, Bacoli's an interesting one. I think that's a, I think his story is an example of maybe, I mean, from what we hear, maybe it's an example of maybe don't be too good in sparring, and maybe don't
Yeah,
boast about how good you are in sparring, and then also maybe don't be too good in the fight as well, and then maybe you have more opportunities. I'm not too sure, but yeah, Anderson, I mean, he destroyed Anderson. I think Bacoli's only 32, and as we know, heavyweights uh I guess have a bit more longevity. So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Bacoli, have some uh, start to maybe if he gets the opportunities, start to dominate. But he's still he's meant to be fighting FA Jaguar, isn't he? That's been talked about.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess we'll wait and find out. But it's exciting times.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about next about Canelo because we're only 5 months away from Cinco de Mayo weekend, which has become synonymous with Canelo. And yeah, we still haven't really got an opponent. What do you think? What do you think? What's your hunch about Canelo? Who's he going to fight next, Steve?
Um, I think that he seems to be on this trail at the moment where he's picking off these undefeated guys. I suppose similar to the way Floyd did with him, although obviously I wouldn't say the likes of Balanga and Munguia are going to go on to have these kind of careers that those two fellas did, but it's similar kind of blueprint. Picked off Munguia's unbeaten record, picked off Belanga's unbeaten record. I wonder whether he'll maybe fight Billy or someone next and sort of pick off. He seems to be on that. Oh, I'm fighting undefeated guys. We all know the opponent that he should be fighting, that we
Mm,
want to see him fight, and that's obviously Benavidez. I mean, a nice second would have been Morel. Those fights aren't happening. They're obviously going to fight each other, which is brilliant. And then the winner of that fight, especially if it's impressive, has even more cause to call out Canelo and say, "I'll move back down to super middleweight and put even more pressure on him." But he's not the kind of guy who likes to be pressured, but that's the fight he should be having. So I could still see the Crawford fight happening. Would not be surprised whatsoever. Crawford's a once a year fighter at the moment.
mm.
Canelo's a twice a year fighter. But I just have a hunch it's going to be someone like Billy. They were talking about William Skull again now to win back the IBF to become undisputed champion. But I think that's a case of him throwing out options like that. Bob Arum always used to do this, throwing out guys like Skull, and people, oh no, I don't want to see that. And then when the actual decision is made, it looks a lot more palatable than the kind of other dominoes that he's put up next to them. So I think that's the only reason why he's mentioning Skull. But yes, I suppose getting back to the point, someone like an Billy, I think, wouldn't put Crawford past it. But if it's none of those guys, I'll be really interested to see who he picks. Um, the names like Eubank Jr. have been floating about, but can't really see that being viable. And he's supposed to be fighting Lara, I think. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what Canelo does. He says that he's still motivated for the sport. I think he's more interested in his golf these days, but it'll look bad on his resume if he doesn't fight Benavidez at some point, and that's the fight that I really want to see, and I know a lot of other people do as well.
100%, 100%. I think the Benavidez fight, I mean, I have to be honest with you, Steve. When I first saw Benavidez coming through, I thought Canelo could beat him, but the fact that
Mm.
Canelo is so, indifferent to fighting him makes me think that maybe Benavidez would actually have a very good chance because there must be a reason Canelo doesn't seem interested in fighting him. He must see something, that's really. I mean, obviously, there's the size. Benavidez is, as we all know, when he's at middleweight, he's a massive super middleweight. Um, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying. He's kind of going for unbeaten guys. I mean, talking to Munguia, that's aged quite badly. Obviously, Munguia suffering a knockout loss recently. What I would say, I mean, I'm actually surprised, Steve, that he's not considering Eubank Jr. because based on his kind of recent opponents, Eubank Jr. kind of ticks a lot of boxes. Eubank Jr. is, I would say a respectable middleweight, super middleweight. He's ranked, I think, in the top 10 by Ring Magazine in the middleweights, I believe. And he's got a massive following. I mean, Canelo Eubank Jr. I think would if that in the UK that would do well. Eubank is a name, so I'm surprised that Eubank Jr. is not Canelo's kind of brushed that aside and not doesn't seem interested in fighting. So I think that does kind of fit into what he's kind of doing recently.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, no, no. Sorry, I was going to say that's a fair point actually. I wonder whether he's been irked by trying to deal with Eubank Jr. or trying to deal with his people or something like that. I do think, no, obviously I could be proven wrong here. I do think they come into the UK thing is a bit of a red herring. I just don't foresee Canelo fighting in the UK. I think he's just Vegas or wherever from here on out. Maybe another one in Mexico. I don't know, but I just don't foresee even in Wembley. I just don't think it'll happen. But yeah, Eubank Jr. ticks boxes as you mentioned for those reasons. He's got the surname as well, I suppose, which sort of carries a little bit of weight. Not so much over the pond, obviously, but to a certain degree. So yeah, that's he could well be someone who's still in the running.
great. And I think, and lastly, Steve, I'd like to, I guess, preview something a bit more on the domestic scene right now. I mean, tonight we've got Callum Simpson versus Steed Woodall tonight in Sheffield. on Sky Sports. What have you made of sort of Simpson so far? Obviously, still very early in his career. But yeah, how do you see the fight tonight going between Simpson and Woodall?
Do you know what? Actually, I haven't really seen that much of Callum Simpson, to be honest, for whatever reason. When he fought Chelly, it was in August, I think, and I was at another show. There was a show in Belfast. I can't remember. It might have been Tyrone McKenna, but at the same night. So I wasn't able to watch the fight live, and I can't. I don't think I even went and watched it back. Maybe highlights or something. But I haven't really sat and watched that much of Simpson. But I know he's a problem for people, and he's a good fighter. I've seen more of Steed Woodall actually in interviews. I've transcribed an interview with Steed, and he's a good guy. He's actually got a really interesting story. He fought over here in Belfast a couple of years ago against
Mhm.
Podrick McCrory. He lost over 10 rounds, but he hurt McCrory, gave a really good account of himself. His other loss was early on in his career against Steve Rolls, and then of course he pulled that one out of the bag against Lerone Richards, who is another story all in himself. But the fact that he came back just out of the blue, had lost the first 5 or 6 rounds, he's got that power, he's got that explosiveness. And Simpson at times he is happy to come forward and trade. It's going to be a home kind of crowd for Simpson as well, so he might feel that pressure that he has to engage and bring the fight to Woodall, which I think will play into Woodall's hands to a certain degree. So he's definitely got the power and the experience, Woodall, to cause trouble. And I wouldn't be surprised if Simpson's maybe hurt at some point. But from what I hear about Simpson, he's a good fighter, in the sparring scene as well. So I think it's obviously his fight to lose, and he would be the favourite to win the fight. But it could be an exciting affair. So I'll be live blogging it, watching along, and I'll have my first time to really sit down and focus and watch Callum Simpson.
No, absolutely. And Simpson, I heard, has been sparring with Artur Beterbiev. So that's interesting. And Woodall,
Yeah.
what I found interesting, I was looking through his box rec, and he started his career in like America and I think
Yes.
Dominican Republic, which I find
Yes.
strange, but I mean, what a story! And then he had his first English fight in England in 2000, I think 21 or something like that. So it should be interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of similar. Seems I've not seen too much of him. From what I can see, he looks like a big super middleweight. I think he's around 6'3", so he's a massive super middleweight. So young guy. I think he's only 28 or so, or 29, something like that. So yeah, I mean, I guess time will tell. Um, but
I think
Woodall,
Woodall as well, Dan. I was just going to say, like, from what I was listening to his interview and all, he was like, he's like a single parent and he's sort of working, I think he's a joiner, a carpenter or something. So, he's not able to have the luxury of training full time all the time. And he was telling us these stories about fighting in the Dominican Republic, as you mentioned. And there was like, these funny stories about chickens running around at ringside and all these kind of these backwater fights. And I think he was maybe sparring on the West Coast and stuff. What I'm saying, he has got an interesting story. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, we love stories like that. Single. I mean, yeah, he's come up the hard way. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
He's come up the hard
Yes.
way, and we always like it when people like that, do well. So, yeah,
Mhm.
may the best man win tonight. May the best man win.
Yep.
Steve, look, it's been amazing you joining me for this first episode. Um, And guys, whoever's listening, please check out Steve's Substack newsletter as well. Um, and yeah, thanks for listening, and yeah, enjoy the fight tonight. And Steve, once again, thanks for joining me, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.